next storyteller who's going to be sharing, I met him very recently, actually. I reached out to him because I had been hearing his name a lot, and I looked him up, and I found out, oh, this kid has been on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. That sounds like an interesting guy. Let me look into it a little bit deeper and see what else he's been doing. And he worked for the mayor for 2 years here in the city. He still works for the city in a different department, but when we met up at Nation, actually. We had a beer, and he just shared what his story was with me, and I was like, that's going to connect with people. I'm really excited to hear it more in detail. I'm really excited for you guys to be able to hear it. So let's invite Daniel Rajaiah here up on the stage to tell his story. Okay. He needs to set up. He has some visual aids for you guys. So going to let him set up for a second. Here, you ready?
All right. Thank you so much, Sean, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. Let's give another round of applause to Sean and all of our great speakers this evening. Well, hey guys, my name is Dan, and I'm really jazzed up to be with all of you this evening. I'm really excited to share my story with all of you. My story is something that's very personal to me, something that's very important to me, and my story is all about how I disappointed my parents. And so, let me preface this by saying that I absolutely love my parents, and I adore everything that they've done for me, but this is something I think we need to talk about. So, I'd like to introduce you to them. These are my folks. I know, you're a traditional Indian couple over here. My dad is an engineer at a small company in town, Procter & Gamble. You guys might have heard of it. My mom is an engineer over at Kroger. And I have some other family here too. This is my grandfather. He passed away, but he was an engineer in India. And this is my dad's dad. I actually don't have any photos of him, so this is what I think he looks like. But he taught the principles of engineering. And this is young Daniel right here. I know, you guys are probably like, what happened to him? Like, he used to be so cute. And so this is me as a baby. I'm wearing an outfit that says engineer on it. And I have, yeah, I know, right? And then I have this, it's so awkward. And you know, the worst part is this photo hung up in my parents' dining room ever since I was like a little kid. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So I'm wearing this outfit that says engineer. There's a little locomotive train here. And, you know, I had a pretty comfortable lifestyle growing up. You know, really didn't have any challenges or, say, like adversities that I was facing. And when I graduated from high school, I went to the University of Dayton. And does anyone here want to take a guess on what I majored in? Wasn't diets or it was engineering. And so I majored in engineering, and I took a couple classes my first couple years there. I took a class on thermodynamics, a class on materials and energy balances, Calc 1 through 4, and actually after I graduated, I had a couple successes come my way. Like Sean was mentioning, I was named by Forbes magazine to their 30 Under 30 list, but not in engineering, but for law and public policy. And you know, tonight what I really want to talk about is finding your passion and then changing your direction if you're going the wrong way. And I think that's something that we can all relate to. And so, given my heritage and my lineage, I think the best way to explain this is through a mathematical formula. Or just a formula, I should say. And so, family pressures plus personal goals times anxiety equals sad face emoji Dan, which is not good. And you know, my first 2 years at UD, when I went to college, I was pretty politically active. I formed a political organization on campus, helped that grow quite a bit. And you know, my first year at UD, I was balancing both my engineering classes and this love and hobby for politics. But when I got to my second year at college, the course load increased, and it was really hard to balance both of them. And I found myself in a lot of my engineering classes reading political blogs and reading a lot of these political stories online. And I found it, I found that I was getting not really that engaged in my engineering course load and a lot more involved and interested in politics and in campaigns. And my grades started to suffer a little bit because I started getting more and more involved in politics. And once that happened, I started feeling terrible about myself. I would go home on the weekends and I feel like there's something wrong with me just because my grades weren't as good as I was hoping they would be. And given all this family pressure that I had to be an engineer, it was a really hard time in my life. And it got so bad to the point that I would, have these constant backaches and stomach pains, and I couldn't sleep at night, and I would get these night terrors about tests that were coming up, and it was pretty bad. And I know I'm not the only one. I know there's been people out there who have gone through similar experiences before. And so it got to the point that I decided to meet with a school counselor. And I met with this guy a couple times. And the second time, I'll never forget, I was sitting in this big couch in his office, and he has a PhD, so he asked me this really crazy question. He said, "Daniel, have you ever considered changing your major to something that is not engineering?" and I honestly never thought about that. I didn't think that was an option. I thought that those people who did things that weren't engineering were just wasting their college degrees and not really passionate, and I didn't think there was another option out there because I was growing up I was trained and told to do this, and so that was a big change for me. And I went away from that meeting. I thought about it for a couple weeks, and I went back to my parents and we talked about it, and they weren't too happy at first with this idea of me changing my major. The first question they asked me was, what are you going to do with that? And I honestly didn't know what I was going to do with a political science degree. But they eventually came around to the idea. We actually went, my family, I brought them to UD that summer of my junior year, and we met with the dean of the political science department. And he asked me, so he met with me, he met with my folks, and honestly, when I went to this meeting with my parents, at the time I thought it was because they were supporting me, but I think it was really because they didn't believe that there was a political science department. I honestly think that's how clueless they were. They didn't really believe that there was classrooms and political science professors. And by the way, my own UD professor, Dr. Birdsong, is here tonight. Great mentor, great friend. And so, it was definitely a culture shock for them. But once I made that change, I excelled, and I was doing what I was passionate about. I was doing what I loved, and I started getting more involved in politics and in campaigns. I actually ran to be the state president of a college political organization. I won that, and I did a lot of cool things through that. I was on the executive committee for one of the state political parties in Ohio. After I graduated from UD, I came back and started working for the mayor, and now I'm in the city administration. And what I'm trying to get to with all of this is that all of these things that I've done since I changed my major, they wouldn't have been possible if I didn't change my direction. And there's actually a quote by John Rockefeller, one of my personal heroes. And I don't want to butcher it up, so I'm going to read it for you here, because that wouldn't be good if I butcher it up. And John Rockefeller once said, "You're an engineer, you can fix it." I know. Any engineers in the house? If you want to succeed, you should strike out on new paths rather than travel the worn paths of accepted success. And I think the thing that we all have going for us in this room is that we're part of a great community in a great city where you can try new things, you can take risks, and you can really make a difference. Given the fact that we have so many awesome startups here in Cincinnati, we have a great business community, we have amazing nonprofits where you can get plugged in. We have the hottest college in America in our backyard. Exactly. There's so many opportunities to try new things. And, I really came to this realization only after someone told me that it's okay to try something new. So my message to all of you guys tonight is take a risk, try something new. It's not easy, especially if you're going like a couple weeks or a couple months and you're feeling kind of discouraged and you don't feel like you're doing what you're passionate about. Try something new. It ended up great for me, and I know it'll end up great for you. So thank you all for your time. Really excited to be here.